Business is a sexual act. And if your business doesn't make you rock hard or dripping wet, then there's a much better way to play this game. This is going to sound like a strange idea if you've used your business primarily as a vehicle to make money. But what I'm going to share with you today is actually the way to not just make way more money, but break through every single income ceiling that you'll ever hit in your business and actually create generational wealth, all while having the time of your life. And I'm saying this as someone who's built a multi seven figure business. I've coached over 1,500 CEOs of 6 to 9 figure businesses, and I've helped them collectively generate over $2 billion in additional revenue. And I will die on this hill, and it took me way too long to realize this, but the true nature of entrepreneurship is erotic. The true nature of entrepreneurship is erotic. As a founder, you're literally becoming aroused by a vision of a future that doesn't exist. Something that doesn't exist in the present moment intoxicates you. And this is an idea for a product, could be an idea for a service. It enters you, it penetrates you, and then you start obsessing over it. You give it language, you give it structure, you give it form. And then you penetrate reality with your vision and you try to bring something into existence in the present moment. And in this process of building your business, reality penetrates you back with feedback, with resistance, rejection, attention, hopefully money, and of course, the desires of other human beings who you're actually called to serve. And through that contact, through this process of interpenetration, something new gets created. You build a structure that creates value in the world, and you capture some of that value for yourself. Basically, sex. And that's basically business. That is the generative nature of Eros. And when you understand this, you will unlock the ability to make more money than you can possibly imagine. Now, I'm not going to tell you to do something that lands you in hot water with HR. And please don't use this as a backdoor justification for becoming an absolute menace at the office, no pun intended. But I am saying that sex and business participate in the exact same creative intelligence, the exact same process with desire, with tension, with the resolution of that tension, a climax, if you may, attunement, expression, receiving, containment, and of course, creation. And when that current disappears from the business, the absence leaves such a massive black hole that no amount of money can make up for. Most entrepreneurs build a business that they think they need to, the one that they think will get them the things that they want, whether it's approval, validation, control, money. And they actually end up not building the business that they deeply want to, the one they deeply desire to, the one they'd be turned on to build. And then they end up scaling this thing that they built at the expense of their energy, their turn on, and their joy, instead of creating a regenerative system that amplifies the currencies that matter most. And as a result, business becomes a profitable chore instead of being a fun game of seduction with the universe that actually sets their soul on fire. A lack of erotic energy in your business has some very clear telltale signs. If this is you, you might feel relieved when certain clients cancel. You may know exactly what to do, but you cannot make yourself do it. You end up in these loops in business where you grow and then you plateau out or you shrink and then you go back up and you're in this yo-yo pattern. You wake up feeling dull and flat. You don't wake up on fire. Your content may be competent and performative because you're going through the motions, but it has no creative juice or aliveness. You say you want more demand, you want to double your income, but there's a part of you that's quietly dreading what would happen if it actually arrived. You may have a profitable offer that you secretly hope doesn't sell because actually it requires you to do stuff you don't want to do and be a certain way that you don't want to be. Now, most people, they think of these challenges as, there's a execution problem, it's procrastination, it's self-sabotage, fear of success, or a discipline problem. But what if your resistance is actually intelligent? What if your body is refusing the reality that your business is currently designed to produce? And of course, if you scale the thing that you're currently running, it's only going to produce more of the reality that you're trying to avoid. And I believe that the absence of turn on is actually one of the primary reasons why entrepreneurs hit a ceiling. This isn't because pleasure magically produces profit or because you should quit every time something gets hard. It's actually because, and this is going to explain why growth feels hard sometimes, you will never sustainably scale a business that you secretly don't want more of. I'll say that again. You will never sustainably scale a business that you secretly don't want more of. Your business should turn you on. And if it doesn't, don't fucking scale it. First, redesign it to make your balls or your lady balls tingle and watch it grow explosively with a fraction of the effort. And I'm going to give you the entire architecture in this video. Some of the most miserable entrepreneurs that I know don't have failing businesses. They actually have extremely successful businesses that they secretly hope won't grow. You know, these are entrepreneurs doing 50K, 300K, or millions of dollars a month. Their offer sells, clients get results, the money is good. From the outside, it looks like everything's working. But if demand doubled tomorrow, their delivery would become unsustainable, their management would become too complex, their resentment would go through the roof, and the distance between who they want to be, how they want to feel, and who their business pays them to be would increase so much that it would cause massive dissonance. So they do weird things to keep the lie alive. You know, they tell everyone, including themselves, that growth is the priority, but they avoid the actions that would actually create it. They hire agencies and consultants, and then magically something never works out. They build a team and they hire, and it's one bad hire after another. They build new offers instead of selling more of the one that works. You know, hire more people, run more ads, all the right things, quote unquote. They change their positioning repeatedly because no message can fix the fact that they don't want the life on the other side of scale. And then some coach tells them to bulletproof their mindset by jerking off to the massive poster of David Goggins that hangs over their bed while making eye contact with the man himself as he silently judges them because they don't want it badly enough. Look, the popular advice that I'm sure you're inundated with is to push harder, to commit deeper, to stop making excuses. And sometimes that's correct, right? Sometimes we're just scared and we're riddled with fear and doubt and, analysis paralysis, and we just need to go do the difficult thing. And I've needed that advice many times. But sometimes your nervous system isn't actually sabotaging the business. Sometimes it's actually protecting you from scaling a model that you don't want more of. And that's a completely different diagnosis. Because if the diagnosis is fear, then the prescription is courage. But if the diagnosis is lack of coherence, then courage is only going to help you build the wrong business faster. And that's terrible news for anyone who's hoping that their next funnel will fix everything. Look, I used to think that most business ceilings were tactical or strategic. And after nearly 2 decades of advising entrepreneurs and companies at radically different levels of scale, I actually don't believe that anymore. Because at a certain point, the business stops growing because the founder has stopped consenting to the future that it creates. And most cases, they're not going to say that out loud. It's really hard to admit that when you run a successful, profitable business. But if this is you, you know this deep down. There's a counterintuitive truth that you must understand, which is that scale does not fix the business. The normal response to a ceiling, when you get stuck, when the business isn't growing, the results that you're getting relative to the effort that you're putting in just don't feel good enough. The normal response to this is addition, right? More leads, more content, another offer, more funnels, spend more on ads, create more content, hire another salesperson, hire employees to manage the employees that you previously hired to manage the complexity that was created by the other employees. And at some point, you basically have a small municipal government and you still haven't understood why you hate the average Tuesday. This problem comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of what scale actually is. Scale does not repair the architecture underneath it. You have to understand this. Scale amplifies the architecture underneath it. If delivery depends on you, scaling is going to create more founder dependence. If your positioning sounds like everyone else, scale is going to increase the amount of money and effort required to buy attention and, of course, convert that attention. If your offer is difficult to explain or deliver, scale is going to give you more customers inside a difficult offer. If your team exists to compensate for very avoidable complexity, scale is going to amplify the payroll, it's going to add more meetings and add more management overhead on top of things. And if the central work, the thing that you're doing in your business most of the time, if that drains you, then scale is going to give you more of the work that drains you, right? This is not rocket science, but it's actually quite nuanced to grasp. If your business already feels like a prison at $30,000, $50,000, $100,000, growing it 2 to 3x, right? If you're making $300K, $500K, $1 million a month, is rarely going to cause it to feel like a fucking spa. Unless you're picturing one of those Turkish spas where you lay on scorching hot stones and get beaten by burly dudes brandishing bamboo sticks who are direct descendants from Genghis Khan. Look, scaling a joyless prison is only going to give you a nicer prison. You cannot tactic, strategy, or effort your way out of an architectural problem. And AI and automation are only going to help you perform the wrong processes faster. Hiring will help you scale complexity that is totally avoidable, and more demand is only going to fill a business that you already secretly hate. So this is why growth eventually hits what I call the coherence ceiling. So the coherence ceiling is the point beyond which the business cannot continue growing without increasing the dissonance between the founder, the market, and the model. And of course, the life that the business is supposed to create. So at an architectural level, the least coherent part of the business constrains everything else. So at the level of Eros, architecture can no longer carry the founder's life force without doing one of four things: suppressing it, diluting it, distorting it, or extracting it. Suppression makes you flatter, safer, quieter, and less alive. You build a brand, but it lacks distinction and polarity. You know what you really think, but you publish the version that's least likely to upset anyone. Dilution gives the market a generic fraction of what you actually see. Your work is good, it may even be excellent, but the most original parts of you have been edited out because you don't actually know how to sell it yet. So you build the business around your excellence instead of your genius, which is your actual unfair advantage in the market. Distortion rewards a promise, identity, or a role that is no longer true. So the market keeps paying you to be the person you were 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago when you started the business. So you actually remain trapped inside your own reputation, actually inside your past. You're basically stuck in a past version of yourself because that's what the business was created to amplify. So you keep performing a character instead of building a business that becomes an incentive structure for you to evolve and actualize into the greatest version of yourself. An extraction means growth actually consumes the person whose life force made the business valuable in the first place. So the business consumes all your energy, leaving you depleted and drained. The market gets your best thinking, your team gets all your attention, your customers and clients get your emotional availability, and the people you love get whatever is left at the end, which is, if we're being honest, not that much. And this is why the problem can look strategic while actually feeling deeply existential. So you think you need a better content system, but the question underneath that is, do I still want to be known for this thing? You think you need more leads, but the real question is, do I want more of these customers inside this offer? You think you need a better team or a bigger team, but the real question for some of you is, why did I create a business that requires me to become a manager of so many people when I actually don't want to manage anyone, right? Your business should turn you on. And turn on, or the absence of it, is actually intelligent information about where the business can regenerate and where it's going to eventually break. Now, I need to argue with my own thesis for a minute, because this idea of your business should turn you on can become catastrophically stupid advice if it actually doesn't contain nuance, or if you don't receive it with the nuance. I'm not saying that every task should feel pleasurable. It does not mean that you should close the company because the admin tasks don't awaken your loins, right? It doesn't mean that every passing desire deserves your focus, because that's shiny object syndrome. And it definitely doesn't mean that hard equals wrong, because we're paid in direct proportion to the size of the problem we're willing to solve. Some of the most meaningful work that I've done has been extremely difficult, confronting, technically demanding, and occasionally a complete pain in the ass. The distinction here isn't easy versus hard. It's actually clean effort versus self-betrayal. Clean effort can exhaust you and still feel like a worthy pursuit. Self-betrayal drains you because the effort strengthens a life, a role, or a business that you don't actually want more of. One of my core beliefs in business is that our business should produce our ideal experience of life. If it doesn't, it's going to become a means to an end. The goal is actually to play an infinite game and not a finite one. Like, I want to do the thing that puts me in a beautiful flow state, that's energizing, that feels like play for the longest amount of time. And I want to play that game with people I actually enjoy being around. So the smart thing to do in business is to compound in a sustainable way over the longest possible time horizon. If you'll only be able to feel the way you want to feel after you sell the thing, or at some arbitrary point in the future when you've reached a made up revenue number, you're actually missing the whole point of this game. Because turn on is intelligence. It tells you where there's still curiosity for you, where there's energy, where there's originality, where you actually feel regenerated by the work instead of depleted, where you can actually sustain the reps and the depth required for mastery. But turn on isn't the only decision maker. Desire has to make contact with the market demand, measurable value, economics, capacity, timing, consequences, and of course, the life that the business actually produces. The artist part of you listens to the desire. The architect part of you tests it against reality in the market. You need both. Eros without architecture makes you inspired, but it doesn't create enough follow through. Architecture without Eros gives you a machine that you don't actually want to inhabit. The goal is not to follow every passion. The goal is to find the intersection between what makes you come alive, what makes other people receive meaningful value, and what can be held inside a model that you actually want to scale. So I call this the genius market model fit. And I came up with this because every serious entrepreneur understands product market fit, but that leaves out something extremely crucial, right? Product market fit is, does the market want what the business sells? Really important, essential question. The largest startup incubator in the world, Y Combinator, that's their motto, right? Make something people want. But it's incomplete from my perspective, because a business can have extraordinary product market fit while the founder hates the product. Delivery requires a constant involvement, and the economics require undesirable volume, or growth produces more of a life that they don't actually want. Product market fit proves that the market wants what the business sells. Genius market model fit proves that the market wants what you are uniquely built and turned on to create through a model that you actually want to scale. So genius is your earned secret. It's your unusual way of seeing things. It's your judgment, your taste, your lived experience, your specific knowledge. It's your obsession, your pattern recognition. It's the work that you can do with a quality that's difficult to reproduce by anyone else, right? It's your unfair advantage. Market is a real human and economic desire. This is not you jerking yourself off to something that interests you and, something that no one wants. People must recognize the value. They must desire the outcome. They must be willing to exchange money for it. Otherwise, the whole thing's just a hobby. And model is the architecture that converts that value into profit, freedom, assets, and scale without requiring chronic extraction from you. So these combinations are actually quite revelatory. Genius plus market, without the model, it creates founder-dependent magic. So people love what you do, but you have to personally perform the miracle every single time. Genius plus model without market creates beautiful work that nobody wants to a sufficient degree. The founder feels very expressed, right? You feel really fulfilled, but the bank account feels a lot less emotionally moved. Market plus model without genius, it actually creates the most dangerous combination, which is a profitable, scalable prison. Look, if the thing doesn't work, you're not going to run it for very long if it doesn't make any money. But the trap is actually a business that works, it produces profit, but it's not the thing you want to grow. It's not the thing you want to run. It's not the thing you want to build. In this situation, the offer works, the system works, but the founder resents the whole thing. And I've seen this too many times, eventually sabotages or burns it down. But when all three become coherent, when all three are aligned, the business becomes valuable to the market, alive for the founder, and actually economically capable of compounding an enormous amount of profit. That's a business worth scaling. So the question is not simply what will people buy? What are people willing to pay money for? The question is, what does the market want from me that I still want more of? Sit with that for a second, because some of you have spent years selling something that you're trying to actually evolve beyond. Some of you are sitting on the most valuable work of your life because you haven't yet built the bridge between your private aliveness and public desire. I work with a YouTube educator who has generated millions of views, whose business could have easily remained centered around, the hooks, titles, thumbnails, and channel growth. And now this guy is one of the best at what he does in the world. Extremely useful work, insane talent. He's got a decade of, expertise and skill in the market. There's a clear demand for what he does. But what truly turned him on wasn't teaching people to imitate whatever video happened to perform last week, which is, the usual meta on YouTube. You find the outliers, you mimic their packaging, their title, their thumbnail, and then you release your spin on it. His thing, the thing that he actually enjoyed the most, was helping a creator discover the idea that only they could make. He calls this their killer angle, and use the creative process as a form of self-actualization. So the mechanism was YouTube, but the genius was actually what he calls creative revelation. Now that distinction changes the content, changes the positioning, changes the offer, changes the customer, and of course, the future that he's choosing to scale. Because selling YouTube tactics or YouTube strategy, it's basically a commodity sale, but selling a way for people to have a creative revelation to uncover the killer angle that allows them to blow up their YouTube channel with a fraction of the effort. Now that's a category of one offer. He's making way more money while actually enjoying his business in a way that he didn't think possible. So another one of my clients had built a business around maximizing credit card points. Again, very useful, extremely profitable, real demand. And when he came to me, he was already doing like 40, 50K months. But the deeper thing that really turned him on was not points. And over time, we honed in on this idea that the deeper thing was what he called experiential wealth, helping successful people convert financial wealth into extraordinary experiences with the people that they love. So the mechanism stayed valuable, but actually became subordinate to a much larger desire. So we reorganized the business around this, and in the space of 2 years, he's gone from averaging, 40, 50K months to now just over 400K just in the last 30 days. And more importantly, he's more turned on by what he does than ever before. And of course, that makes everything in the business more effective. He's also able to run the business in under 15 hours a week, even though his revenue has increased by 800% in the last few years. And by the way, there's a full case study of how we did this in the description if you want the entire scaling playbook that we deployed. And this is actually what most entrepreneurs get backwards, right? They make the vision subservient to the business model. The model must actually be subservient to the vision. And the vision must be subservient to what actually turns you on, what feels like work to others and play to you, right? And this applies if you're a consultant, if you're a creator, if you're an agency owner, if you're a SaaS founder, if you're running an e-commerce business, if you have some sort of expertise that you're selling as a service, as coaching, advisory, whatever the thing is. your genius will look different than the norm because you're actually unique. This may be the way you design products. It could be the culture you create. It could be the space you create when you work with people. It could be the customer problem that you understand better than anyone else in your market. It could be the operating constraint that you refuse to accept. It's the aesthetic standard that you bring to a boring category. It's the way that you make customers feel. It's the future that you can see before the spreadsheet can prove it. Your business should turn you on, and you must build it in a way that it becomes the architecture through which that intelligence enters the world. Now, here's the part that might make you feel either truly seen or personally attacked. How you fuck is how you build your business. Your patterns around desire, intimacy, control, receiving, performance, power, exposure, and surrender don't politely remain in the bedroom while you go run the business. If you perform during sex, you will perform for the market. If receiving makes you uncomfortable, then you may struggle to receive money, attention, support, or demand without immediately trying to earn it back or leak it elsewhere. If you rely on control to create safety, then you may over-engineer or death grip the business until nobody can breathe inside it, including you. If you chase the climax, then you may organize the business around launches, spikes, and revenue events while neglecting the relationships that could compound for years. If exposure terrifies you, then you may dilute your message until nobody can reject it and nobody can recognize themselves in it either. Right? I'm going to make an entire video about this because there's far more here that I can responsibly unpack in 3 minutes. But you have to understand that your business will always be a mirror for the deepest parts of you. Whatever remains unconscious in you will eventually acquire a funnel, an org chart, a pricing model, and a calendar, because the business is always building you back. The question is, do you want to become more of the person that it currently rewards you for being? So how do you actually design a business that turns you on without throwing the commercial reality out the window? So you need coherence across 5 layers. And I'm going to give you the entire pay to exist model that I've used to help tons of entrepreneurs not just scale their businesses exponentially, but do so in a way that the bigger the business gets, the more that they enjoy it and the better their life gets. So this is my formula for maximizing and scaling profit, purpose, and play simultaneously, which to me is the holy grail of entrepreneurship. Source, signal, structure, scale, and sovereignty. Source is where the value begins. What are you unusually turned on, designed, obsessed, or qualified to create? What is the thing? What is your thing? What did, if you want to get, a little more spiritual, what did God design you for? What is the unique design that you came here with? What is the most harmonic symphony that you as the instrument are designed to produce? What do you understand about your customer, your industry, your craft, or the problem that most intelligent people still misunderstand? What's the work that gives you more energy after doing it? It doesn't leave you depleted. It gives you more energy, not just satisfaction because you completed a task. This is not that, dopamine checklist. I'm talking about life force. I'm talking about mojo. I'm talking about juice. Source is the deepest current, the charge, the aliveness that's underneath your best work. Signal makes source perceptible. So this is your brand. And ideally, this should be what I call a singularity, which is something so unique and distinctive that no one else can replicate it. Can the market recognize what is singularly valuable about you? Can people understand why it matters, who it's for, and what changes after they encounter it? This is the positioning, the language, the content, the proof, the reputation, the trust, and really the world that your brand creates. Source without signal remains private. And signal, separated from source, becomes content without distinction or transmission. So the question is your marketing expressing what is alive, or is it disguising it inside language that you think that the market will approve? Structure gives the current a container. So energy needs a pipe to flow through. That's what structure is. Your offer, your price, your promise, your boundaries, your sales process, your delivery model, your roles, your org chart, your margins, and your customer experience, right? This is the architecture that allows you to efficiently and enjoyably exchange value with the world. For some businesses, structure feels like it contaminates the magic, right? If you're ADHD like me, there's a part of you that rebels against structure. But actually, structure is what amplifies the magic, because a river needs banks, music needs an instrument, sex needs enough consent, safety, and containment for the greatest amount of pleasure to become available. So a business needs the right offer, sold to the right person in the right way, and delivered to delight both the client but also the founder. So ask yourself, if you got, triple the customers and clients next week, would you celebrate or would you panic? The answer is panic. Then don't be so focused on buying more leads. Fix the structure. Then we get to scale. So scale is the amplification and the propagation of your signal without dilution. So can the current travel through products, media, technology, systems, assets, and of course, other people without requiring you to reproduce the magic manually every time? So scale should multiply the value, not merely multiply your involvement. So it should increase the outputs in an asymmetric way relative to the inputs. The right strategy is not whichever mechanism is currently fashionable these days. It's the mechanism that's doable, sustainable, and compoundable for you as the founder, for your market, for this offer, and of course, for your life. You don't need every channel. You don't need every offer type. You don't need a team because a man standing next to a rented Lamborghini said, delegation is leadership. You need the smallest coherent architecture capable of carrying the maximum amount of value. The last piece here is sovereignty. Sovereignty is what completes the circuit. Does the profit return to you in meaningful ways beyond just the money? Time, rest, pleasure, creative capacity, presence with the people you love, peace of mind, sense of quiet satisfaction, the ability to refuse opportunities that aren't really meant for you, the freedom to return to source and create again. Money is renewable, but time is not, right? A business doesn't create freedom until its founder actually has the ability to choose. So ask yourself this: is the business making me more sovereign as it grows, or merely more enmeshed with it? Source creates the value, signal makes it perceptible, structure makes it buyable and receivable, scale lets it travel, and sovereignty returns energy to the source so the flywheel can spin again. Right? That's the architecture. Eros is the current moving through it. Now let's make this painfully practical. So open a note on your phone, steal a child's crayon, write this on the back of a tax notice, I don't care. So score each of these from 1 to 10. 10 being it turns you on out of your mind, and 1 being it leaves you completely flat, depleted, and drained. 1, the work that your business is centered around. 2, your positioning and your public expression. 3, the customers that you attract and serve. 4, the way that you sell. 5, the offer itself. 6, the delivery experience. 7, your daily role, the things that you have to do each day. And 8, the future that's produced if this business becomes 5, 6, 10 times as big. For every area, I want you to think of 2 questions. First, how economically valuable is this, right? Is it going to produce a greater amount of profit? But second, how deeply do I want more of this? That's going to give you 4 categories. So the 2 axes are turn on and value. So the first one is high turn on, high value. So this is the thing you want to protect at all costs. This is the thing you want to actually build a business around. You want to scale this carefully without letting the architecture eat the turn on. High turn on, low value. So do not immediately call this your new business model or reject this outright. This may be art, this may be experimentation, this may be research, or it could just be an unmonetized signal. So you want to find the intersection with an existing market desire. You want to package it, you want to test it, and you want to let contact with the market tell you what to do. Low turn on, high value. So you don't want to impulsively burn this down. This may be funding the transition. So at this point, you want to redesign it. You want to change the customer, change the delivery, reduce your proximity, productize it, delegate it, automate it, or consciously use it as a bridge while you build the next architecture. There's nothing enlightened about creating a cash flow crisis because you watched a rather arousing YouTube video. So I trust that you're going to use your discernment. Low turn-on, low value. So why is this still here, right? This is corporate necrophilia. You're keeping a dead thing alive because deleting the Google Doc feels emotionally intense. So kill it. And then ask yourself the 5 questions that I use to expose the deeper design problem. So 1, if the demand quadrupled next month, what would I feel first? Excitement or dread? 2, what part of my business am I secretly tolerating, resenting, or outright dreading? 3, what does the business keep paying me to be that I no longer want to be? 4, which activities leave me with more life after doing them and which ones leave me drained? And then if I had $100 million in the bank, which parts of this business would I still choose? Would I still run this business? Right? Like if I didn't have to do something for the money, would I still choose to serve this business? How would I actually spend my days? Would there be certain people missing from the equation? What am I putting up with? What am I tolerating? So your answers reveal the difference between the business you say you want to scale and the business that your body is actually willing to inhabit. So if you want to book a scaling architecture session with me where I take you through this whole process and help you redesign your business for maximum turn on, profit, and joy, there's a link somewhere in the description. When the architecture becomes coherent, the business actually completes a circuit. So Eros appears as an idea, fascination, or desire, or a truth that wants to take form. Desire gives it direction. Signal makes it perceptible. The market creates contact through attention, recognition, resistance, conversation, and demand. And structure creates what I call the agreement field: the offer, the price, the promise, the roles, the boundaries, and the delivery. Inside that container, creation and exchange happen. So the customer receives value, the founder, that's you, receive money, proof, insight, energy, and the right to keep creating. Scale lets the current travel without dilution or constant founder extraction, and sovereignty returns the proceeds as time, choice, rest, pleasure, and of course, deeper contact with your source. And then the circuit begins again. A funnel moves value in one direction towards a transaction. A circuit returns energy to the source that actually created it. When the circuit breaks, you feel it. Desire without signal stays private. Signal without source becomes noise. Source without structure becomes chaos. And structure without Eros creates a machine that you don't actually want to run. Scale without coherence only amplifies distortion. And money without sovereignty actually becomes another form of captivity. So your business should turn you on because a regenerative business gives you more life than it takes. Not necessarily in every moment, but as a system as a whole. The circuit should return more creative capacity to its source. Otherwise, the business is consuming its own fuel supply and scaling at the expense of what actually matters most. And this is where I want to be extremely clear about the standard that I operate from. Look, I want Eros and EBITDA in the same breath. I want the business to turn you on and produce extraordinary profit. I want the offer to feel like art and convert like crazy. I want the structure to honor your life force and survive the spreadsheet. I want your work to serve your soul and create meaningful value for other human beings. Aliveness that never makes contact with the market may just be beautiful expression. It's not yet a business. Profit that repeatedly suppresses, dilutes, distorts, or extracts the founder's life force may be commercially successful, but it's never going to make it past the coherent ceiling. Profit proves that the exchange creates material value. Purpose is devotion to the creation that's trying to move through you. Play is the felt quality of Eros moving through you without chronic suppression. So the goal is not to scale at the cost of your soul. The goal is actually to scale in a way that amplifies your soul. The goal is to build an architecture that carries both. And that's what I call paid to exist. Not paid to grind, not paid to perform, not paid to become the machine, but paid to build a business where becoming more valuable to the market actually allows you to become more fully yourself. We're entering an era where information is abundant, right? Competent execution is becoming cheaper. Now people are outsourcing, things that they would hire someone for to AI models. And AI can reproduce tactics, content, code, designs, and strategies that, previously took people years to learn. But the thing that's becoming scarce is the founder who sees what nobody else can. It's the founder with judgment, who has an actual worldview, taste, lived authority, and of course, the courage to express it without diluting themselves. And of course, the architecture that's capable of carrying it into the world without destroying the person that it actually came through. So in my world, the identity that we seek to hold, I call the exponentialist. And the exponentialist is an integration of three archetypes: the mystic, the artist, and the architect. The mystic connects the source and hears the music, receives the downloads, gets the ideas. The same place that Steve Jobs got the idea for the iPod. The artist gives the idea form, and the architect builds the instrument through which that harmony can play. This channel is about becoming the exponentialist and building the business that only you can build. So we're going to talk about positioning, offers, marketing, sales, AI, assets, scale, money, wealth, identity, eros, and of course, the architecture that connects all of it. We're going to talk about how your sexual patterns enter your business, why money is actually a function of intimacy, how selling and offers are actually sacred, and how to build a game that only you can play. How to create a business that becomes simpler, more profitable, more sovereign, and more alive as it grows. Now, I'd love for you to come on this journey with me if this resonates with you. If you want another channel with 17 hooks to manipulate an algorithm, there's many supremely talented, over-caffeinated men standing next to rented Lamborghinis who would love to help you. But if you want to build a business that becomes more valuable to the world, as it becomes more alive for you, then you're in the right place. Look, your business should turn you on because the business you build is actually building you back. And if you don't want to become more of the person it currently pays you to be, don't fucking scale it.